Hey everybody, what's going on? If you are like me, and you are a music nerd on top of all the other types of nerd categories that I fit into, you were at a record store this weekend for Record Store Day. I thought that I would take the time to talk about some of the titles that I got and why I got them, and share those with you and show you some of the other cool little tidbits we got, like extra material and colored vinyl and all that. So let's take a look. Share your experiences with me too. Let's do it. So the first one, and one of the most obvious ones that just about everybody probably went to go grab automatically based on the cost and a million other factors, is the Led Zeppelin one. Yes, of course. On top of being the first Record Store Day release for Led Zeppelin themselves, we got two alternate mix versions of songs that have never been released before. They are literally unreleased versions of these songs. So we've got Rock and Roll, which is the Sunset Sound mix. When I listened to it, I don't think it sounded drastically different from the original cut, but still different enough to make it worthy of this release. It definitely had more of a raw crunch sound to it, which some may actually prefer to the studio cut on Zeppelin 4. And then the other song is Friends, which is the Olympic studio mix. That's I'll say that one is much more different. At least the song itself is mostly recorded the same way, but without the arrangements in the background from the again from the studio version. So it has a very different sound to it. It also came in a very neat little yellow vinyl there, and I really liked the fact that it has the adapter piece right in the middle there. So anybody who didn't have the ability to play 7 inches on their player for whatever reason, you'd be good to go with that. Personally, mine actually came with my turntable. I have an Audio Technica LP120, and the thing's a beast for a cheap direct drive table. Next thing we have here is the Descendants. They put out a single called Who We Are in the wake of the recent presidential election. I think just based on what I just said, you already know what it's about or where it's going. It's also got two B-sides that were never, I don't think were ever released anywhere else before. Pavlov's Cat, which was pretty, actually really good, really catchy, and then another song called Opt In. Both of them were good. I could see why they didn't put them on Hypercaphium Spazzinate or Spaz Hazard. I'm trying to remember the name of the other EP. But still, a really nice release from a really great band that I can't believe is still even going after all this time. Still one of my personal favorites in the pop punk category. They've always been standouts. I met them once at Vintage Vinyl about just around the time of the new album coming out, and really fun, nice guys to talk to. Good experience. And then, yeah, more great releases again. Fully recommend if you could find it. Next, we've got Steven Wilson's How Big the Space. This song was not actually on his latest album, To the Bone. This is just being released as its own separate product. I am not going to lie, the song is catchy as all hell. Maybe that's due to a certain familiarity with it. I mean, it's extremely British. I'm gonna say it's very British. You'll notice little nods to artists like Pink Floyd and plenty of other prog acts, even though I wouldn't call the song itself progressive rock anymore. He's kind of been shifting away from that. Some call it pop rock. I don't know if I'd go that far, but the first side has that song and an instrumental version of that song following it up. And then the B-side of it is an alternate version of People Who Eat Darkness from the To the Bone album. The difference with this version is that it features Nanette Tayeb as with more prominent vocals. In the original version of the song, she was more of a backing track. This one has her up front and center. Also, just to show the record real quick, we have a very nice shade of blue. Very nice. Very pretty. And thankfully, this is not one of those types of colored vinyls that actually messes with the sound of the release. It's still good. It's still prominent. Wilson is very good at mastering sound. If you didn't know lately, he has actually been remixing and remastering all kinds of classic progressive rock albums, all the way from King Crimson to Yes to Caravan and just about everything in between that you can think of. Really relevant artist, basically, if you're into that type of music. He also came from Porcupine Tree, if you were into that group, which I personally really loved and still revisit every now and again. Now, this one is especially interesting to me, and I don't hear it get talked about much, but I think it's pretty relevant. So this is a release of Frank Zappa's Lumpy Gravy. This was, Lumpy Gravy itself was Frank Zappa's first, considered his first solo album. He was coming out of the group The Mothers of Invention and worked on that with a symphony orchestra. Some confusion came about in 1967 when he first recorded the piece, where MGM actually filed a lawsuit against him for supposedly violating his contract with them. So as a result of that, he ended up editing the song heavily and basically splicing parts of it and including other things like surf rock and dialogue and other bits to make it its own thing. So that would become the Lumpy Gravy that we saw in 1968. Well, not we. I wasn't alive then, but that's the version that you saw of Lumpy Gravy at the time. So more interestingly, this version here is actually the original 1967 recording that we never got to see due to those copyright issues. So I thought this was a very interesting thing to see, because it's outside of one CD box set called Lumpy Money, which happened to include it. We've never seen it on vinyl until now, so I was very stoked to see that come about. And just to show everyone here, we have a very interesting design here. It might be hard to tell, but there's actually little there we go. There's actually little bits of black in there with the red to give it almost more of a marble coloring. Again, really pretty stuff. And I have to say, it was interesting to hear this one for the first time too, because upon hearing it, it's like everything makes sense all of a sudden. I now understand the methodology behind a bunch of songs that he released around the same time, and that's not a coincidence either. But hearing the whole orchestral piece in one go, it's a really interesting experience. And anyone who is a fan of Zappa at all, I think that you have to hear this in one way or another, whether it's through the Lumpy Money set or through this disc if you can get it. But yeah, I think as a hardcore Zappa fan, this is pretty much essential listening. I had never heard it before now, and I'm blown away by what I now know as a result of it. People who don't know what it is or what it's about may not see much special in it. This is more like a reward to old classic fans that have always wanted to get, squeeze every last drop out of Zappa's catalog possible, and looks like we're still getting new gifts and surprises like this one out in the open, so very happy to see that and hoping to see more in the future. Oh, one more thing about the Zappa release. Also, each one of these, at least in the United States, I believe, was individually numbered. You'll see mine down there, number 1634. Good times. Although I have not gotten to listen to this one yet, was very surprised to see it all the same. So Swans released an album called Die Tour ist zu, which I hope I did not just butcher, but I'm sure I probably did. I'm sure a German person is now laughing at me. This album by Swans was exclusively released in Germany on CD and was never anywhere else. It was never released in America, and it was certainly never released on vinyl. So now we finally have a chance to do it. It comes in these little plastic sleeves here, which is not the worst thing ever. I guess it's better protection than the paper sleeves if they're going to stack them on top of each other. But yeah, very curious to hear what it sounds like, because I didn't even know it existed before, and I thought I was someone who considered myself a fan of that band, and boy was I surprised. Another one that I assume is one of the more popular releases of this year, though I didn't look into that directly, is the re-release of Pink Floyd's first album, Piper at the Gates of Dawn. Comes in a very nice little box here, which when I open it up, comes to reveal a poster, and then, of course, the actual album repress itself. Now, I do have a repressing of this album already, but it was the stereo version. I've never actually heard it in mono before on vinyl, so I'm pretty excited to check that out. I still haven't gotten to it yet. Again, hopefully either today or tomorrow or very soon, but very much looking forward to that. If there's anyone I trust to make quality re-releases of albums, it would be a band like Pink Floyd. They know their stuff, they know their audience, they know their sound mixing, and not much else to say. If you've never heard Interstellar Overdrive before, then are you really a Pink Floyd fan? I wonder. But very worthwhile album. Probably one of the more interesting psychedelic rock projects of the mid-'60s that I've ever heard. I was also surprised to see this one come out into the light. It's every once in a while you get a title that you just didn't see coming. This would definitely be one of them. Hawkwind here just put out a re-release of all alternate takes, therefore unreleased material on vinyl previously. This material was previously in a box set called Parallel Worlds, I believe it was called, but it was just on CD. It was never on vinyl before, but these mixes go back to, of course, the 60s. And I have never actually heard any of these alternate takes before. This is another one of those groups that was considered a pioneer of the progressive rock genre, and something that most fans of it would consider essential as far as the group itself goes. So I'm curious to hear how these different arrangements will go. These may not be, I'll say, an intro band for getting someone into progressive rock, but once you start to really get into that more hardcore notion, this becomes one of those, again, one of those essential groups that you pretty much have to give a listen at some point in time. I really do like the inside too. These are very nice looking openings in the gatefold here, and of course the sleeves themselves, if I could get one out of here, that also look pretty neat with the track listing and the logo. And the second one also looks the same. Very well put together set. I'm hoping it sounds as nice as it looks these days. Represses can be kind of iffy, but record store day, most people usually go all out to make sure that they sound the best that they possibly can, so I'm going to trust in that. Another one that I was initially on the fence about at first. I'll just show it off here. Fish's Billy Breathes. This album came right after the album Hoist. I'm not gonna lie, as much as I loved the first 4 albums by the group, I was not a big fan of Hoist itself. It was very different. I'm trying to give it another chance again, but I wasn't rushing out to go buy the release of that. Now this one, Billy Breathes, on the other hand, that one actually brought me right back in. It was a much softer album in tone, but lyrically much better than most things they had put out to that point. And it was just enough of that little edge of jam band, what I'll call personality thrown in there to still make it stand out. I assume this means we'll also be seeing Story of a Ghost on vinyl by next year, which would be cool to see, because I'm pretty sure that old pressings of that go for over like $600 to $900 online, some really ridiculous sick amount like that. But in the meantime, very happy to see this. Whoever is really putting these vinyl releases out, they've been doing a very good job. For something that was only on CD up until now, you usually don't expect it to sound any good when it comes to vinyl, but they've been pulling out all the hard work to really make it stand out. This is another numbered release, just like the Zappa one. Now, the Zappa one, I believe, had over 5,000 of them pressed. This one had over 7,500 pressed. So imagine my surprise when I saw my individual number here. If you could see that, that is 62. There's literally 62 out of 7,500. So boy, was I surprised to see that, and very, very happy. Again, again, this is the best it's ever sounded, easily, without any question, just as the other 5 releases were. I still really value Junta. I think that was their best album by far. And I always tried to decide for myself when I really felt like they were going downhill, because I'm not so sure anymore. Obviously, they're still big live. Everybody sees them as the next Grateful Dead, and that's understandably so. They came in at just the right time and really took up that mantle for people. So I still respect them for that. I still respect Trey and the gang for all of that. And yeah, looking forward to seeing Story of a Ghost next year and reliving that one, which I don't believe I've actually heard since the 90s. So that will be an experience again. And now these last two I'm excited about for especially nerdy reasons. Especially nerdy, because there is no sound quality reason for getting these on vinyl. This is just something that I think is really, really cool. These two things. We have 2 Doctor Who audio releases. The first here is The Tomb of the Cybermen, and the other is The City of Death. Now, what I absolutely love about all of these, if anyone's ever heard the audios before by Big Finish Productions, these really go all out. They're great ways to experience Doctor Who stories in new ways that you may have never thought you would want to in general. You get stories that have either been filmed or not, sometimes lost episodes, and you get narrations, sometimes by the person playing the Doctor. In the case of City of Death, Tom Baker, or actually, sorry, in the case of Genesis of the Daleks, or other serials like that, I've heard Tom Baker do the narrations for it. And what makes these so fun is if you've ever listened to an old-time radio show before, as long as you could just use a little bit of imagination when you listen, they would put you into all kinds of different worlds, from, you know, the Lone Ranger to the Shadow to all kinds of other amazing settings. And so just, yeah, as a nerd, a vinyl collector, listener, and a Whovian, this is just wonderful stuff for me. And I just love all of the attention put into the details of this. For Tomb of the Cybermen, we have Cybermen colored vinyl themselves, very, very nice looking. And for City of Death here, we've got the interiors, similar interiors. I also, on top of these two, got other Record Store Day releases of Genesis of the Daleks and Rise of the Pescatons. Both, again, just as fun to listen to. Really, really enjoyed them. And here for City of Death, we have a pretty green vinyl. Also very fitting with the story. If you see the evil green alien in it, it's very, very fitting and very apropos for the Doctor, so to speak. Yeah, this is just the this is the multiple versions of nerd and me coming out that make that one so fun, and I can't wait to listen to those later either. Yeah, a little quick talk about what makes Record Store Day so interesting and so special and yet so flawed all in one to me. Obviously, when this day started out, people looked at it as a way to support independent labels in independent stores. Now, it's still celebrated in independent stores, but major labels started to see this and take this as an opportunity to promote their own releases, and it started to overtake the independent ones. And so rightfully, independent artists felt kind of cheated by that. And I agree that was unfair to them, and I do hope that someone can figure out a way to properly put them back on that mantle again someday. However, I'm not gonna lie and pretend like I'm not interested in these releases as they come out as well. It's just a different kind of playing field. On the other hand, this holiday has now caught on with more people than I've ever seen in my lifetime, and while some could claim that people are only going just to go there and resell things, and let's be fair, there are a lot of people that do that, and it sucks, there are also just as many passionate music people that go there as well. I have experienced this firsthand myself. When I get in line, I go bright and early to get to my store. Mine happens to be Princeton Record Exchange every single year. Everyone that I talk with, they're all very, very passionate music fans. And one of the most interesting things about it is that, of course, we're all into different things. Sometimes we like a few of the same bands or artists, but it's never completely the same. It's always going to be a new experience with whoever you talk with, and that's one of the few times I actually like to come out of my shell and talk with people more, because we're all there for the same reason, we're all there for the same things, and we all just feel that sense of joy, even just when waiting in a line. And that's one of the things that really makes it such a fun, special event for me. It's not even just getting these things and enjoying them and listening to them. It's the whole experience, which is funny because you've probably heard people defend listening to vinyl under that guise to say, yeah, it's about the experience. So maybe this all rolls together in that sense. I'm not totally sure. There are some releases I think are totally pointless. When you re-release the same old albums that everyone's seen 1,000 times and you can get used in a store for like $2, then yeah, it's more than understandable that you're not going to be excited to see it again. Woo. But for more interesting, unreleased stuff, yeah, I'll admit they can get me sometimes. That Frank Zappa record, that got me. That was huge for someone like me, and I'm sure there's little things like that were just as big for other people. A lot of people in front of me in line I saw getting re-releases of Taylor Swift albums, and I think that live Linkin Park album, and you know, that's not the kind of thing I go for, but at the same time, cool. It got those people in a record store to buy a record that they may actually listen to with an actual turntable. That's cool. I like that. That's creating this experience for other people. And that's really what the whole day is about. So I try to take the good with the bad, and I know there are others who have become a little more bitter about this over time, and I don't blame them for that. But I hope that they can also try to see the good that comes out of this day just as much as the bad, like I try to do as well. And I think that's going to wrap this up for my thoughts and experiences on Record Store Day this year. Did you get anything? What do you think of the holiday? Maybe you agree or disagree with some of the points that I tried to make here. But I'd love to hear from you. So feel free to let me know in the comments below. Remember to hit like and subscribe. I mostly just put out video games and comic book related nerd stuff, but hey, who knows, maybe I could do more music things too. I obviously have a lot to say about it, so I'd like to keep doing that more, huh? Alright, let me know, and have a good one.